Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, you guys are troopers. I want to thank everybody. You know, this is a solid 3 hours on a Saturday. We work hard all week. You know, just the fact that everyone is here and here for the duration is just so impressive right out of the gate. I'd like to thank all of the presenters today. Rick, I really appreciate you coming on as well. We think it's really important to make training available, and not just in the meetings, because we know sometimes it's far to travel, but trying to figure out unique ways to get together so that we can spend the time really training and giving others the benefit of additional resources and tools. So real quick before I get started, let's make sure that you can hear me and see my screen. If you could just raise your hands. Very good. Okay, so those of you who didn't raise your hand, go find your hand, because during my session I'm going to be asking some questions to you guys. It's going to be a little bit interactive, so you're not just going to listen. I'm going to ask you to participate with me in this next session. And what I'd like to introduce you to is something called leadership through quality. You see, I think everyone pursues quality and wants to deliver quality. You want to deliver a quality presentation, a quality product, a quality service, quality communications, and you want to be a quality leader. But the truth is that quality, while you certainly know it when you see it, and you know it when you experience it, it's not necessarily something that we can specify and be specific about. We can describe it, but way back, and I am going way back now, even before my time, there was a statistician, okay, who said, what if we could quantify quality? And by quantifying it, this gentleman is W. Edwards Deming, and he found a way to quantify the delivery of quality in all we do. And he started speaking about this premise, this total quality concept to American companies, and they really didn't buy into it. But after World War II, the Japanese did buy in, and they invited him to go to Japan and train their largest companies in this concept, how to quantify, manage, and measure quality. Had he not done this, we would not have seen the enormous growth of Japan after World War II. He was so successful at it that, as ironic as it seems, these companies grew and started to take market share away from American companies, to the point where American companies could not compete with Japanese companies anymore. And so there was a man at one of these companies, Xerox Corporation, who paid close attention to what Deming was saying. And what he was saying is, you can't manage something you can't measure. You might feel it, you might know quality's there, but you really need to be able to manage it, to deliver it. It's not enough for you to just set out to do your best. You have to first know what to do and then do your best. And then this one should be interesting to all of us, because if we look at it, he says profit in business comes from repeat customers. Customers that boast about your project or your service and that bring a friend with them. Well, isn't that really what we're setting out to do, right? Bring something to someone that inspires them to bring a friend. And so as this leader, this American leader of Xerox Corporation in 1983 took over a company that was facing bankruptcy, Xerox had been synonymous, okay, with the copying industry. They created the first copier, they invented the technology, only to watch the Japanese completely take their market share away. When this man took over as CEO, they were determining whether Xerox could go forward or actually file for bankruptcy. He took a look at this and he said, I need to understand what they did. How did the Japanese create, processes and products at prices that, we can't even touch? And he understood then all of the teachings of Deming and this quality concept. And he came back and he took his executive staff together and he said, we are going to implement something. We're going to implement it company-wide, over 100,000 employees. Not only are we going to implement this and accept it, okay, but this quality movement is going to be a requirement of our vendors as well. It's not just going to be Xerox. It's going to be even those people who supply us. Well, it took 5 years, $125 million, and over 4 million work hours, okay? And not only was he able to take Xerox from the brink of bankruptcy, but he was able to secure and gain all of that market share back and to reinstall Xerox as a major provider of office equipment, not only in the United States, but in the world. It was an unbelievable task, unheard of when he started, and by the time he was done, the company won the much coveted Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award in 1989. I can tell you that his presentation of this concept was not well received initially. How do I know? I joined Xerox in 1983. The quality concept was introduced in 1984. I was a national instructor for the company. I'm a certified leadership through quality trainer. I was responsible for bringing sales, service, and information technology analysts through the program over those 5 years. I'm a member of the team that won that award. But initially, everyone was very skeptical of what this man had to say and what we were setting out to do. The basic premise of this discussion of quality was that we would take this pyramid and turn it upside down. And what that means is that the CEO is there to serve, and that those that report to the CEO actually serve those that report to them, and so on, all the way down the organization, whether you were a delivery person, a secretary, a service technician, it did not matter. Okay, we were there to serve one another, to understand what everyone needed, and to deliver that in a superior fashion. It had an entire language that was attached to it when we started this training. It was certainly unique, way before its time. A compressed version of what that training was called, which is Leadership Through Quality, I've prepared for us. And it's because there are critical elements of this training that I just thought, because when I started working for the company, I was 19 years old. I just thought that this is what all companies did. I thought that this is the way business was. It wasn't until I left Xerox after 15 years that I realized how unique and extraordinary, okay, the program that they delivered was. And it's only now, after dealing with many different project teams, companies, I'm an entrepreneur, you know, a lot of interaction with a lot of different people, both in finance, information technology, that I see that it's not prevalent. It was very unique then, it is still a case study now, and in striving to deliver quality and quality products, services, communications, transparency, I think it's important to start sharing that with everyone who is a part of the company. So the success of this training is a benchmark today. It's still a case study for quality. It's truly amazing. It's withstood the test of time. And it's not something that is just applied to manufacturing or even business or even this business. It's something that can be applied to all human interaction. How do I know? I've been applying it ever since I learned it to my benefit. So I will tell you, pretty amazing. What it's all about, it's about understanding costs. You might say, well, how does understanding costs roll into my personal life? Well, we're going to show you what that means. It means identifying your customer, benchmarking the competition, learning how to coordinate high-performance work groups, how to reach consensus, how to assess your own performance, and how to repeat the process and never accept that good enough is enough. Always going to see if you can reach a higher level, if you can deliver it in a better way, a faster way, a more productive way. It is that constant pursuit of excellence. That's what the quality cycle is all about. So that being said, I would like to welcome you to what I'm calling Leadership Through Quality Direct. Okay, it is a highly abbreviated version of what was a 5-year program delivered at Xerox, which had enormous impact that I think should be very beneficial to everyone who's with us today. So it breaks down, I've broken it down into really 4 key areas. It's costs of quality, identifying customers and their needs, how to do competitive benchmarking, and how to operate, create, and interact in a high performance work group. This is actually going to be 4 different sessions, and today what we'll be doing is the cost of quality, session 1. By the time we're done, what session 1 is all about is you understanding the time to money relationship, how to calculate your own personal value. Each of us has a value, and we need to know what that value is so that we can use our time wisely. Along with that, we're going to learn how to identify costs for every decision that we make, because Deming said decisions can be quantified. Every act can be quantified. And once it's quantified, it should be measured. It should be measured to see, was it a good investment? Did it yield the desired results? And in doing that, I'm going to talk to you about the different types of costs when we go to spend our time. It's the time of conformance, non-conformance, and the cost associated with delivering quality. And then finally, by the time this session is over in just a few short minutes, you're going to know how much your activities cost you. So, show of hands. Oh wait, let me take all the hands down. Does anybody here want to know exactly how much time their time is worth? Do you want to know how to quantify everything you do on a daily basis? Oh, look at that. Not only are you paying attention, but you're all raising your hand. Just finding the hand to raise it seems like half the problem most of the time. Excellent. All right, let's move on. I'm sorry, I was facilitating this, so I have so many screens up right now. All right, here are the benefits that will be associated with you going through this exercise with me. You should be able to increase your productivity, okay, because you'll be able to quantify and look at your day in black and white, in numbers. You should be able to eliminate wasted time. You should be able to apply your activities to your desired income, not what you're making now, but what you would like to make. You should know your value at all times, and you should be able to quantify the value of others. And you should always monitor the return on your efforts. Just the way we monitor the return on the money we put to work in the markets, we need to monitor the return on our own activities, our own actions. Let's calculate this. What is the value of your time? Not my time, your time. And you can do this in 1 of 2 ways. You can calculate the value based upon what you earn today, or you can calculate it on the money that you would like to earn. Doesn't matter. Okay, I don't care if you figure out what you are earning right now, if you want to shoot for something else. Just get that number, that annual number in your mind right now at this second. Raise your hand if you have that number in your head. Oh, some of you are still thinking. I see about 1/3 of the hands up. All right, much better. Take that annual income, that number, and I want you to divide it. Divide it by 12 so you know what your month is worth. Divide it by 52 to know what your week is worth. Divide it by 5 to know the value of 1 day. Take your weekly, divide it by 5, and you'll know what 1 day costs you. Divide that value by 7 or 8 so that you know the value of an hour. And then divide that by 60 to know the value of a minute. Now, every time I go through this exercise, even when I taught it at Xerox, everybody would be like, oh, this is ridiculous. Why should I need to know the value of a minute? Oh, let me show you why. It's going to just amaze you how important the value of just 1 minute is once you quantify it. As an example, let's take a $52,000 annual income. That represents a value of $4,333 a month, $1,000 per week, $200 per day, $25 per hour, and 41.6 cents per minute. Conversely, let's take a look at somebody who's earning $104,000 annually. It's $8,666 a month, $2,000 a week, $400 a day, $50 an hour, 83.3 cents per minute. You get the idea. You'll do that math on whatever number you put in your head. Now I want you to consider for 1 second, just as an example. We're having a meeting. The meeting starts at 7 p.m. 25 people show up at the meeting at 7 p.m. 50 people are expected. We don't start until 7:30, okay, because half of the attendees are late. When you consider that a half an hour was wasted by 25 people, and you take their per minute or their per hour cost, and you times it by the amount of people who waited around, how much did that half-hour delay cost? Well, I could tell you, it starts to add up very quickly. And that is the point of understanding that value, of understanding that time, because it can be applied to anything. That was just one scenario where I wanted to show you that even 1 minute and knowing that value is considerable, right? Because it also means that when you are doing something that you know is not productive and it is not going to give you a return, you at least have in your mind, okay, what that minute is worth, how much money, okay? I mean, for me personally, over the years, there are times I'll be sitting in a movie or something like that I just hate, and I'll get up and I'll leave because I'll just start calculating in my head exactly how much time I'm wasting on this movie I don't enjoy. So now let's take a look. Consider in your mind. First of all, let me take all your hands down. And now let me ask you, how many of you have been able to successfully calculate your minute number, your own personal value number? Raise your hand. Okay, just about, only about 10% of you.
I would raise my hand, but you can't see.
Okay. All right, so go ahead. If you haven't done it, you should. You know why? What I want you to do is I want you to consider the costs, your own personal costs of what it's like to wait 20 minutes on hold, or 1 hour waiting for a meeting to start, or sitting 3 hours in traffic, or 1 hour listening to complaints, 2 hours training someone for the second, third, or fourth time. What is the return on this time investment? And so you see, you have to ask yourself, if you look at your day and you notice that this amount of time was spent in these areas, okay, how are you really going to change this so that you get the most productive minutes in play, okay, for the minutes that you are dedicating, in this case to business, but again, this can be applied to almost anything. Consider the costs if you were to spend 30 minutes arranging follow-up calls to prospects, 1 hour to find a new prospect. If you invested 1 hour into yourself, whether it be into training, exercise, or development, consider the costs associated with 2 hours of refining your own objectives or updating your own action plan. Consider the cost of coordinating a meeting with 5 new prospects. What could the return on this investment of time be? And so very quickly you could see that there are those activities that, while it does cost you time, will have a benefit that returns, and there are those that will not return. Okay, it's time that is spent, and it is just not going to necessarily return. People say usually at this point, all right, you use some examples, but you know, some people you really have to give more time to, some things you have to do over and over again. I don't disagree. However, there are things you can do once you understand this program, okay, that says we can minimize it and we could prepare to do it differently. So here are some of the pitfalls. All of us are human and we all like to do what we like, period. We like to do the things we like to do. The things we don't like to do, we put them off, we leave them for later, you know, and sometimes we never get to them. So one of the things that you can do once you understand the value of your time and you've quantified it is that you should start your day off with the activities you like the least. Get them out of the way. Get those activities you like the least out of your way. Make it a habit. Graduate through the day to those activities you like the most, which, as opposed to you getting tired towards the end of the day, you'll actually find yourself getting excited towards the end of the day. End your day by assessing the time value. Where did you spend your time? Was it spent wisely? Did you spend it on things that will give you a return? And then finally, always keep the value of your time in mind. Don't let others squander your time. As we've just established, that time is money. So there's a lot to be said behind that statement. There's actually dollars behind it. Next, let's talk about spending wisely. Every decision or action can be measured. It can be quantified. No decision is actually a decision to do nothing. That's what people need to realize. When you have inactivity, inaction, then you're actually making a decision to overlook or ignore something. There are 3 types of costs that you should consider when going to spend your time doing anything, okay? There's the cost, and there are some fancy words, but I'll tell you what they mean, and they won't be so fancy anymore. There's something we call the cost of conformance. That's basically saying that something needs to be done, and we go and do it. We don't ask, what's the best way to do it. We don't really think about it. This needs to be done, we do it. The next is the cost associated with nonconformance. And this is important because most people never consider this. Okay, if I don't do something, what is it going to cost me? People are like, well, I didn't do anything. Why would I even consider that? But that's what you need to start considering. Because when you don't do something, it will cost you. Nonconformance actually ends up costing us the most, and it is the hidden expense. It's hidden because we didn't do something, we didn't address something, and by the time it becomes an issue that everyone sees, a lot of time is being spent on it. So the cost of doing nothing, the cost of nonconformance is significant. And then last, the cost of quality. And that's the cost associated with not just doing something, but seeking to do it the best, better, differently. Typically that costs more money because it costs more time initially, but the cost of quality in that pursuit will pay off immeasurably later on. So it costs more at the beginning, takes more time, but the results are longer. Okay, they last longer, and they have a larger impact. Let's take a look a little closer at nonconformance. I want to give you an example so you can understand how quickly it could get out of hand. Let's say, and we're just going to use obviously your scenario in building a team. You have grumblings from your team members. You're starting to hear complaints. People are obsessing over perceived problems. You start to see a loss of enthusiasm, and you see diminishing growth. And you just pretty much stay the course. Come on, guys, you know what you have to do. But you're not really getting to the bottom of why are people dissatisfied? Where are the grumblings coming from? What is the root cause? Okay, avoiding this can be very expensive. All right, this nonconformance can be very expensive because what starts to happen is the grumblings take over. And once that happens, the enthusiasm is gone. And then you're a leader with no followers. You've lost a team, let's just say. It happens everywhere. It happens even in small, informal work groups, right? Have you ever volunteered somewhere to work on a project? You can very quickly see things get away from you. Now let's take a look at what it's like to conform, right? We take an issue, we address the issue, we listen to concerns, we coordinate resolutions, we lead by example, we give, some personal hands-on training. This is good. People are happy, growth is maintained, the status quo is working, everything is fine. Okay, this is a fairly productive team. This is typically what we see, okay, a productive team. But what if we want all of the people marching together in tune, happy all at once? It seems absurd, almost impossible. You'll never please all of the people all of the time. And I have come to know that while it's not easy and it is a longer road, it absolutely can be done. You see, when you come together and create a common objective and everyone participates and everyone assumes responsibility, everyone raises their hand to contribute, everyone is heard, and direction is set not by one but by all, something very unique takes place. And it doesn't happen overnight, but you have to start somewhere, right? And it's this understanding. If everybody is speaking from the same book, if everyone is calculating the value of their time, if everyone wants to be productive and spend their time wisely, and everyone has the same set of rules, then you're all moving forward, okay, together, all right, with a commonality. It takes longer, more time, so therefore the cost up front is more, but in the end, you can accomplish more, you could produce more, and you grow quickly. You reach that point of momentum, and then there's no stopping you. But it's not the type of momentum that comes in on a whim and leaves the first time something goes wrong. No, this type of momentum has a coordinated team behind it who has a joint objective, an objective that is shared. And it's a lot harder to knock that team off the track. Trust me when I tell you. So I know it's a lot that I went over very quickly, but I want you to think about these basic little activities that we talked about. Quantifying your time value and having others doing the same. Calculating the cost of each activity that you do and asking yourself, you know, I just spent about X amount of dollars doing that. Was it worth it? Is it going to give me what I want? It is going to bring me closer to my objectives. You learned how to identify the cost of effective actions while also identifying the potential losses associated with activities that are not very productive. And it's the concept that was introduced to you today that quality is not nebulous. It is something that can be quantified. It can be measured, and it can be managed. Next steps. You know, it's one thing, you learn about something, you hear about it, it sounds fine. What do? Calculate a day in your life. Identify wise spending. Identify areas that are costing you due to inaction. Structure your activities so that wise spending is accomplished first. And then identify actions and needs that require a quality use of time. And begin that process, that journey of addressing it. Okay? And let me give you an example, a couple more examples of this. You'll see leaders, I've seen leaders over the last few years come in like gangbusters. Okay? Tons of people come into the organization. And then, just as quickly, tons of people leave. And if you go back and you look behind there, right, that's quantity, but it's certainly not quality. So you ask yourself, what is missing in that scenario? Why did all of these people come in and then just leave? And it's because their process that they used sold a dream that was not the right one. The expectation was wrong. And it doesn't take long if you have the wrong expectation for that to be uncovered and you to move on. So will it take longer to set the right expectation? I don't know that it takes longer, okay? But maybe not everyone is as excited about the proper expectation. Maybe they like, okay, promises of riches overnight and money in their cell phones, which is really not what this is all about. But if you take the time to set the proper expectation, if you start to see that you're losing members very rapidly, going back and trying to understand, well, they said the product didn't work. Well, they were here for 3, 4, 5, or 6 months. You know, this is a long-term activity. All right, trading is only one element of the product base. This is really a march to something bigger over a longer period of time. But maybe that was never the expectation that was set. And therefore, you could see that now with losing all of those members, a lot of time and a lot of money was wasted, even though the quantity of the activity at the beginning was very high. See, it's much easier, okay, to do it that way than it is to build slower and ensuring the proper expectations. But you can quantify the output, okay, much higher, right? Someone who has the right expectation is prepared, you know, and understands everything that Rick Roberry just covered with you, you know, and so they have a losing day, it doesn't affect them, or a losing week, a month, and so on. So quantifiable actions, it can be applied to just about everything. Today's session was session 1, the cost of quality. Session 2, okay, which is identifying customer needs. If you like this concept of leadership through quality direct, I'll be presenting that in Miami on March 4th. Competitive benchmarking will be presented in New York on March 11th. And then the other session, high performance work groups and consensus, will be on our next global webinar, okay, which is yet to be scheduled. Finally, I appreciate your time today because I know how much it costs. Believe me, I calculated. And I want you to keep in mind that when it comes to quality leadership, the true leader is always last. So thanks so much for your time. Now I'm going to deliver it back to you and go back to monitoring questions.